All right, let's get right into it. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into open world games.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah, we've got a list here of 12 games
Mm.
spanning various consoles and areas of gaming.
Wow, 12. That's quite a list.
Yeah, it is, but they're all really top tier games that I think are worth talking about, and I think
Yeah.
just diving in and figuring out what makes them special, why they've risen to the top.
Absolutely. And I think what's always interested me about open world games, like you said, they really do span, different platforms, different times, but the genre itself has evolved so much.
Right.
It's not just about having a big map anymore. It's about how that world is used to, create a really immersive and engaging experience for the player.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Because, one of the games on this list that I think really exemplifies that shift is Breath of the Wild, The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
Fantastic game.
When that game came out, everybody was going nuts over the physics engine and just how much freedom you had to experiment within the world.
It was a real game changer.
Yeah, you weren't just exploring. You were like
Bro.
using the world itself to solve puzzles and overcome obstacles. It was wild.
Yeah, and it really encouraged you to think outside the box. Like you said, using the physics engine to your advantage to, maybe create a makeshift bridge or even just find a creative way to defeat an enemy.
Totally. And I think that kind of leads into something I was thinking about is like, do you think that focus on like freedom and experimentation within the world comes at the expense of a strong narrative? Because another game we have on the list is The Witcher 3, which is like known for its incredible story and branching storylines.
Right. That's a really good point. And I think, Breath of the Wild and The Witcher 3 kind of represent two different sides of that coin.
Sure.
Breath of the Wild excels in giving you freedom within its systems, whereas Witcher 3 really focuses on player agency within the narrative. So your choices as Geralt of Rivia genuinely impact the world around you and the ending you'll get, and that leads to, incredible replayability.
Yeah, so in Breath of the Wild, you're shaping the world in a very literal sense,
Yep.
using the physics and the tools around you. And in The Witcher 3, you're shaping the narrative itself through the choices you make.
Exactly. And both approaches can be incredibly immersive in their own way.
Absolutely. And speaking of immersive worlds, I mean, we can't talk about open world games without mentioning Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh man, what a masterpiece.
That game just like transports you to the American West, and the level of detail is just mind-blowing.
It really is. And I think a lot of that comes down to the technology they use to create it.
Okay, so like what's going on under the hood there?
Well, they used the Rockstar Advanced Game Engine, also known as Rage, and they coupled that with the Euphoria engine for character animation.
I've heard of Euphoria, yeah.
And what that essentially means is that the characters move and interact with the world in a way that's incredibly realistic.
Yeah, I mean, I've literally just sat there and watched NPCs go about their day. It's that convincing.
I've done the same thing.
But for all its beauty and detail, do you think Red Dead 2 is as challenging as some of the other games on our list?
Well, that's an interesting question because it brings us to Elden Ring,
Ah, yes, Elden Ring.
a game that's become infamous for its difficulty.
Yeah, Elden Ring is not messing around.
It really isn't, and this is where we step into the realm of Souls-like games, which are known for their punishing combat, their intricate level design, and often very cryptic storytelling.
I'm terrible at Souls-like games.
They definitely require a certain level of patience and skill.
Yeah, but Elden Ring takes those core elements and like explodes them into this massive open world, right?
Exactly, and it's a world that constantly challenges you to master its mechanics or die trying.
So you've got Red Dead 2, which is drawing you in with its visual fidelity, and then you've got Elden Ring, which is demanding your full attention and skill just to survive.
Two very different approaches to open world design.
For sure. And then you have something like Minecraft, which is almost the opposite end of the spectrum.
Minecraft. It's a classic.
It's a game that's practically synonymous with creative freedom.
Absolutely. And it's amazing how it's managed to stay relevant for so long.
What do you think is the secret to its success?
I think it's the simplicity and the emergent gameplay. You're given these basic tools in this endlessly generatable world,
Right.
and it's up to you to create whatever you can imagine.
It's accessible to everyone, right? You can have kids building their first dirt houses, and then you have adults creating these insane redstone contraptions. It's incredible.
It really is a testament to the power of imagination, and I think it's something that we'll see continue to evolve and inspire for years to come.
Yeah, Minecraft is definitely one of a kind. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about games that use open worlds to immerse us in specific historical periods. like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, for example, which throws you right into the world of Vikings.
Oh yeah, Valhalla is a great example of how open world games can blend historical accuracy with, really exciting action-adventure gameplay.
So you're not just exploring a beautifully realized version of ninth century English, you're
Mhm.
also like raiding villages, engaging in political intrigue, really shaping the course of history.
Well, a fictionalized version of history, of course.
Of course, of
Yeah.
course. But still, it's a really cool way to learn about a different time period.
It definitely makes history more engaging than just reading about it in a textbook.
And speaking of historical settings, we also have Ghost of Tsushima on our list, which takes us to feudal Japan during the Mongol invasion.
Ah, yes. Ghost of Tsushima, a truly stunning game.
It's visually breathtaking, and the combat is so fluid and satisfying.
The game really leans into that samurai aesthetic, the code of honor, the swordsmanship.
Yeah, even like the color palette and the use of wind as a guiding force, it all contributes to this very specific atmosphere.
It's a masterclass in world building for sure, and it's interesting how both Valhalla and Ghost of Tsushima use their open worlds to immerse you in a specific culture and time period.
Yeah, it's like you're stepping into a living history book.
Exactly, but
Right.
with a lot more action and adventure, of course.
And speaking of games that have stood the test of time, we can't forget about Skyrim.
Skyrim, a true classic.
I feel like playing Skyrim is like a rite of passage for RPG fans.
It really is, and I think its enduring appeal comes down to its flexibility. It's a classic fantasy RPG with a ton of lore and quests, but the modding community has kept it alive for all these years.
Yeah, you can basically turn Skyrim into whatever you want it to be.
Exactly. Whether you want to play a hardcore RPG experience or just mess around with silly mods, the possibilities are endless.
So it can be as casual or hardcore as you want it to be, which is pretty cool.
It really is, and I think that speaks to the power of open world games in general. They can offer something for everyone.
Totally. And if we're talking about games that give you the freedom to carve your own path, Cyberpunk 2077 has to be mentioned.
Oh yeah, Cyberpunk 2077, a game that had a very controversial launch.
Yeah, it definitely had its issues at release, but I think underneath all the bugs and glitches, there's a really unique and ambitious game there.
I agree, and Night City itself is a marvel of world building.
Oh, it's incredible. The level of detail, the atmosphere, it's like a character in itself.
It really is, and the game tackles some pretty heavy themes too, technology, identity, what it means to be human in a world that's increasingly dominated by machines.
Yeah, it's a game that really makes you think. And I think that's something I appreciate about it, even if it wasn't perfectly executed.
It's definitely a game that tries to push the boundaries of what's possible in an open world setting.
For sure. And on a very different note, we have Far Cry 5, a game that takes us to rural Montana, which is not a setting you see very often in games.
It's a pretty unique setting, and the game definitely doesn't shy away from some controversial themes.
Yeah, that game can be pretty intense, especially with the whole doomsday cult thing.
It's definitely not for the faint of heart.
But I think it's interesting how it gives you so much freedom in how you approach the situation.
Yeah, you can go in guns blazing or take a more stealthy approach, recruiting allies and sabotaging the cult's operations from the inside.
It's a game that constantly keeps you on your toes.
For sure, and it's a good example of how open world games can create a sense of tension and uncertainty, even in a familiar setting.
And speaking of familiar settings, we have Grand Theft Auto V, which needs no introduction.
Ah, yes. The king of open world chaos.
What I find interesting about Grand Theft Auto V is that it offers two distinct open world experiences. You have the single-player campaign, and then you have Grand Theft Auto Online.
Right, and both are incredibly popular in their own right.
Yeah, Grand Theft Auto Online has become this massive, persistent world where you can basically do whatever you want.
It's like a virtual playground for adults.
Pretty much. And it's constantly evolving, too, with new content and updates being added all the time.
It's become a phenomenon, and it's really changed the way we think about open world games.
Yeah, it's crazy to think how much it's grown since it first launched.
It's a testament to the power of online communities and the desire for shared experiences in these virtual worlds.
And it brings us back to something we were discussing earlier about how open world games achieve immersion.
Right. Some games do it through stunning visuals and attention to detail, like Red Dead Redemption 2.
Others do it through complex systems and emergent gameplay like Breath of the Wild.
And then you have games like Grand Theft Auto Online that create a sense of immersion through social interaction and community building.
So it's not just about the size of the world or the technology behind it. It's about how these games make us feel.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes open world games so compelling.
They can transport us to different worlds, different time periods. They can challenge us. They can make us laugh. They can make us cry.
They can make us feel like we're truly part of something better than ourselves.
And that's a pretty powerful thing.
It really is, and I think we've only scratched the surface of what these games have to offer.
Yeah, we could spend hours talking about the intricacies of each of these games.
And maybe we will in the next part of our deep dive.
We'll see. But for now, I think we've laid a good foundation for understanding what makes open world games so special.
Absolutely, and I'm excited to delve deeper into some of these titles in our next segment.
Me too.
Yeah.
So stay tuned. It's amazing how these games can transport you to these completely different worlds and make you feel like you're really there.
It's the ultimate escapism, right? You can
Right.
be a Viking raider one minute and a samurai warrior the next.
Exactly. And speaking of historical depth, we have to talk about Skyrim. I mean, it's practically a rite of passage for RPG fans at this point.
Skyrim. Oh man, what a game. It's incredible how it's managed to stay relevant for so long.
Yeah, it's been out for over a decade,
Mhm.
and people are still playing it, modding it, discovering new things.
I think it's a testament to its flexibility.
Right.
You know, it's a classic fantasy RPG with a ton of lore and quests.
Right.
But it's the modding community that's really kept it alive all these years.
The modding community is insane. I mean, they've created everything from new quest lines to completely overhauled graphics.
Yeah, you can basically turn Skyrim into whatever you want it to be.
It's like the gift that keeps on giving.
And it's a great example of how open world games can cater to a wide range of players, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You can have people who want to just dive into the main story, and then you have people who want to spend hundreds of hours exploring every nook and cranny.
Yeah, you can really make your own fun in Skyrim. And speaking of games that give you a lot of freedom to make your own choices,
Hmm.
we have to mention Cyberpunk 2077.
Oh, Cyberpunk. Yeah, it had a rough launch, but I think there's a really fascinating game there underneath all the technical issues.
Yeah, I mean, Night City itself is an incredible achievement in world building.
It's such a vibrant and dangerous place, and the game really delves into some complex themes.
Like what kind of themes?
Well, you know, technology, identity, what it means to be human in a world where the lines between man and machine are blurred.
Yeah, it's definitely a game that makes you think, and it's also visually stunning.
Oh, absolutely. The neon lights, the crowds, the sheer scale of the city, it's breathtaking.
It can be a bit overwhelming at times, but in a good way.
I agree. It's a game that really immerses you in its world. And speaking of immersive open worlds, Far Cry 5 is another one that comes to mind.
Oh, Far Cry 5. Yeah, that one takes us to rural Montana, which is not a setting you see very often in games.
It's a nice change of pace from the usual big cities and fantasy worlds.
And it's a pretty intense game, too, with the whole Doomsday Cult storyline.
Yeah, the antagonists in that game are really unsettling.
They're, like, genuinely creepy.
And it's interesting how the game gives you so much freedom in how you choose to fight back against the cult.
You can go in guns blazing or take a more stealthy approach. Recruit allies. Sabotage their operations.
It's really up to you to decide how you want to play it.
Which is cool. I like that kind of flexibility in an open world game. And on a lighter note, we have Grand Theft Auto V, which is kind of the gold standard for open world chaos.
Grand Theft Auto V, yeah, it's a classic for a reason.
It's just so much fun to play. You can steal cars, cause mayhem, explore the city at your own pace.
And it has a great sense of humor, too.
Oh yeah, the writing is hilarious.
But what I find most interesting about Grand Theft Auto V is its online component.
Grand Theft Auto Online. Yeah, it's become a phenomenon.
It's crazy how much it's grown since it first launched. I mean, you can do everything from running your own criminal empire to just hanging out with friends and causing trouble.
It's like a whole other game, and they're constantly adding new content and updates.
It's become a real community hub for gamers. And it's a great example of how open world games can foster social interaction.
Yeah, it's not just about exploring a virtual world anymore. It's about sharing that experience with other people.
And that brings us back to something we were discussing earlier about the different ways that open world games achieve immersion.
Right? Some games do it through stunning graphics and attention to detail.
Others do it through complex systems and emergent gameplay.
And some do it through the power of social interaction and community building.
It's fascinating to see how different developers approach this challenge, and there's no one right answer.
Exactly, and I think that's what makes open world games so exciting.
There's always something new to discover, always a new world to explore.
And with technology constantly evolving, who knows what the future holds for this genre?
The possibilities are endless.
I can't wait to see what they come up with next. All right, so we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into these incredible open worlds.
You know, in the last couple of segments, we We really got into like the scope of these games and the different settings and themes and all that.
Yeah, and now I'm thinking it's time to like zoom in a little bit and get into the nuts and bolts, you know?
Yeah, get into the mechanics.
Yeah, the mechanics, like what makes these games tick on a deeper level?
Okay, so where should we start?
Well, we've touched on combat a bit already, but I think it's worth diving a little deeper.
Okay, yeah, combat is a huge part of a lot of these games.
Yeah, and we've got such a wide range here. You know, on one end of the spectrum, you've got something like Elden Ring.
Which is notoriously
Oh,
difficult.
yeah. Elden Ring does not hold your hand. It's like trial by fire.
You're going to die a lot.
Oh, yeah, you're going to die a lot. But when you finally overcome a challenge in that game,
It's so satisfying.
so satisfying.
It's a real test of skill and patience.
For sure. And Elden Ring also has this incredibly deep character customization system.
Oh, yeah. You can really tailor your build to fit your playstyle.
Whether you want to be like a heavily armored knight or a nimble rogue or a spellcaster raining down fire from afar.
It's really up to you.
It's amazing. And speaking of customization, Cyberpunk 2077 also has a ton of options, but with a more futuristic spin on it.
Right. You can augment your body with cybernetic implants.
Yeah, you can have like mantis blades and enhanced reflexes and all this crazy stuff.
It's really cool, and it lets you really embody that cyberpunk fantasy.
Totally. But not all open world games are about intense combat and futuristic tech.
Right. Some games focus more on exploration and atmosphere.
Yeah, like Red Dead Redemption 2.
Red Dead Redemption 2 is a masterclass in environmental storytelling.
Oh, it's beautiful. The world feels so alive.
Yeah, from the mud clinging to your boots to the way NPCs react to your presence, it's incredible.
And the sound design, too, is top-notch.
Oh my God, the sound design is amazing.
The creak of a saddle, the wind blowing through the trees, the distant howl of a coyote.
It's so immersive.
And it's those little details that really make a difference.
Absolutely. They elevate the experience from just being like a big map to a living, breathing world.
And speaking of little details, Breath of the Wild is full of them.
Oh yeah, Breath of the Wild is constantly surprising you with its little touches.
Like you can cook meals that grant temporary buffs, or you can chop down trees to build makeshift bridges.
Or you can just like set a bunch of grass on fire and watch it spread.
Yeah, it's a game that really encourages experimentation.
And then you have Minecraft, which is like the ultimate sandbox.
Minecraft is in a category of its own.
Yeah, it's a game that's all about creating your own fun.
You can build anything you can imagine. You can explore these endlessly generated worlds.
And it's a game that can be enjoyed by people of all ages.
Yeah, from little kids to adults.
Mhm.
It's amazing how much creativity Minecraft has inspired.
It's a testament to the power of simplicity and imagination.
And it's not just about building and exploring. These games can also tell amazing stories.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Some of the best narratives in gaming can be found in open-world games.
Like The Witcher 3?
The Witcher 3 is a prime example. The branching storylines, the complex characters, the morally gray choices.
Yeah, it's like playing through an interactive novel.
And the writing is superb.
Yeah, it's witty, it's dark, it's emotional. It's everything you could want in a good story.
And Red Dead Redemption 2 and Horizon Zero Dawn also have fantastic narratives.
Yeah, they really draw you in and make you care about the characters and the world.
It's clear that a lot of care and attention went into crafting these stories.
And I think that's what makes the best open world game so special.
Yeah, they managed to strike that perfect balance between giving you freedom to explore and telling a compelling story.
And they transport you to these amazing worlds that feel both vast and intimate at the same time.
It's a really impressive feat of game design.
It really is. And as we wrap up our deep dive, I'm just struck by the sheer variety and ambition of these games.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground, but we've only scratched the surface.
There's so much more to explore and discover.
And I think that's what makes open world games so exciting.
The possibilities are endless, and the future of this genre is looking bright.
So if you're looking for an escape, an adventure, a challenge, or just a chance to lose yourself in another world,
I highly recommend checking out some of the games we've discussed today.
you won't be disappointed.